that? Do you understand that? All right, hey, set the tone from the rip. All right, set the tone. If they bump, bury them. You understand that?
Police have now ruled the deaths of a couple in Burlington Township last week a murder-suicide. Police found the bodies of 30-year-old Kristopher Corry and 28-year-old Tianna Drummond Thursday morning at the Willow Point Apartments. Officers say an investigation revealed that Corry fatally beat Drummond before shooting himself. Police responded to the apartment after a neighbor called saying she heard arguing.
On the morning of January 2nd, 2020, officers from the Burlington Township Police Department were summoned to the Willow Point Apartments on Salem Road in Burlington Township, New Jersey, after a neighbor reported a loud, prolonged dispute coming from an upstairs unit. Inside, authorities discovered two lifeless bodies, 28-year-old Tianna Drummond and 30-year-old Kristopher Corry. What initially appeared to be a routine wellness check rapidly escalated into a full homicide investigation. Drummond, a college graduate and mother of two young sons, and Corry, a local youth football coach, were found dead in circumstances that defied simple explanation. Early evidence suggested a violent altercation preceded their deaths, prompting detectives from the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office and local law enforcement to piece together a timeline of events, motives, and unseen tensions within the walls of their apartment. A complex narrative that would unfold with shocking twists as the case progressed. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. Tianna Drummond, 28 years old, was a resident of Burlington Township, New Jersey. She grew up in the local area and completed her primary and secondary education within the community. From an early age, she demonstrated an interest in organized activities and pursued higher education, eventually obtaining a college degree in entertainment management. Her educational background positioned her for professional opportunities in event coordination and media-related fields, although details regarding her employment history remain limited. Friends and acquaintances described Drummond as a structured and goal-oriented individual. Her social media accounts reflected an organized life, emphasizing family connections, recreational travel, and engagement in local youth activities. Drummond frequently documented her involvement in sports programs and community events, indicating a consistent commitment to public participation and support for local initiatives. As a mother of two young sons, Drummond maintained an active role in their upbringing. She participated in school events, managed schedules for extracurricular activities, and engaged directly in community youth sports programs. Within her community, she was recognized as a reliable and present figure who contributed to organized events and programs for children. Interviews with acquaintances and family members consistently highlighted her dedication to her children and her consistent involvement in structured community activities. Kristopher Corry, approximately 30 years old at the time of his death, was a resident of Burlington Township and had maintained ties to local youth sports organizations. Corry worked as a youth football coach, contributing to structured programs and coordinating team activities. Within the community, he was perceived as an active participant in organized events and programs involving children and adolescents. The relationship between Corry and Drummond had been ongoing for an unspecified period. Publicly, their interactions were visible through social media, which documented shared activities and general life updates. Observers noted a pattern of frequent public appearances together and participation in local events. While the relationship was documented as stable in certain contexts, the nature of the interactions leading up to the incident indicated periods of dispute, which were reported by neighbors and law enforcement. On the evening prior to January 2nd, 2020, neighbors reported hearing disturbances emanating from the Willow Point Apartments unit where Drummond and Corry resided. Accounts from multiple residents indicated loud arguments, prolonged verbal disputes, and sounds consistent with physical altercations. The noise persisted intermittently throughout the night, prompting concern from surrounding residents. At approximately late evening hours, several 911 calls were placed to emergency services reporting the disturbances. Dispatcher logs recorded complaints regarding loud noise, shouting, and potential domestic conflict. Responding officers were initially dispatched to the location to assess the situation, though there is no public record indicating that officers made contact with either Drummond or Corry prior to the fatal incident. Witness statements collected during the investigation detail repeated loud noises, including banging and crashing sounds consistent with an altercation within the apartment. Neighbors reported hearing phrases suggestive of heightened conflict, although no specific verbal exchanges were confirmed. The reports indicated that the dispute was unusual in volume and intensity compared with previous interactions in the building, contributing to the decision to escalate the call to a wellness check the following morning. In the early hours of January 2nd, Burlington Township Police arrived at the Willow Point Apartments to conduct a wellness check at the specific unit occupied by Drummond and Corry. Upon arrival, officers secured the apartment and surrounding area to ensure the safety of responding personnel and residents. Inside the unit, investigators discovered two deceased individuals, Tianna Drummond and Kristopher Corry. The positions of the bodies suggested the occurrence of a violent confrontation immediately prior to their deaths. Visible trauma was documented on Drummond's body, consistent with blunt force impact, while Corry was found with firearm-related fatal injury. The weapon was recovered on the scene and documented as part of the crime scene inventory. Initial statements from investigating officers indicated that the scene presented characteristics typical of an internal domestic conflict escalating to lethal outcomes. Officers described the environment as controlled and systematically processed for forensic examination, with attention to physical evidence, positioning of the victims, and potential indicators of sequence of events. Upon securing the apartment, forensic teams began processing the scene for evidence collection. Blood patterns, body positioning, and the location of the firearm were documented. Photographs were taken, and measurements of the scene were recorded for reconstruction purposes. Forensic personnel assess the likelihood of premeditated versus impulsive actions based on physical evidence, injury patterns, and spatial orientation of the apartment interior. Autopsy procedures were initiated to determine the cause and sequence of deaths. Forensic analysis indicated that Drummond sustained injuries consistent with blunt force trauma prior to Corry's death, which was firearm-related. Toxicology tests were conducted to assess the presence of alcohol or controlled substances that could have contributed to behavior prior to the incident. The Burlington Township Police Department, in collaboration with the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office, conducted interviews with neighbors, family members, and potential witnesses. Dispatch logs and 911 call records were reviewed to reconstruct the timeline of disturbances reported prior to the fatalities. Statements from community members provided contextual information regarding the nature of the relationship between Drummond and Corry, as well as prior incidents of loud disputes that may have occurred within the apartment. Evidence gathered during the initial investigation led law enforcement officials to classify the case as a murder-suicide. The sequence of injuries, combined with witness accounts and scene evidence, indicated that Corry inflicted fatal trauma on Drummond before causing his own death. Official statements from prosecutors confirmed this classification after completion of forensic and autopsy examinations. Following the discovery of the deaths, the Burlington Township community was informed through local channels. Residents were briefed regarding the nature of the incident and advised on protocols for domestic violence awareness. Community organizations coordinated support initiatives for Drummond's surviving children, focusing on logistical support and structured caregiving arrangements. Fundraising efforts were established to provide financial support for the immediate needs of Drummond's children. Public statements were made to maintain a fact-based account of the incident while respecting privacy considerations for the surviving family members. Following the discovery of Tianna Drummond and Kristopher Corry at the Willow Point Apartments in Burlington Township, New Jersey, investigators immediately initiated a comprehensive forensic investigation. The crime scene presented a complex scenario that required careful documentation, evidence collection, and analysis. Law enforcement officers cordoned off the apartment and photographed all areas for records. Blood spatter patterns, the positioning of both bodies, and the presence of firearm were all meticulously cataloged. The Burlington County Medical Examiner's Office conducted autopsies on both victims. Drummond was found to have suffered blunt force trauma, consistent with multiple strikes to the head and upper torso. The extent of the injuries indicated a violent physical confrontation prior to death. Corry, on the other hand, was determined to have died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Toxicology reports were completed, confirming the absence of incapacitating substances in either individual's system at the time of death, ruling out drug influence as a contributing factor in the events. Investigators reconstructed the sequence of events using evidence from the scene, forensic analysis, and witness statements. The findings suggested that a physical altercation began inside the apartment, during which Drummond sustained fatal injuries from blunt force impact. After the assault, Corry retrieved a firearm and fatally shot himself. The forensic team concluded that Drummond's death preceded Corry's, consistent with the official determination of a murder-suicide. Crime scene examination also included detailed analysis of blood patterns, which indicated the movement of both individuals during the confrontation, and confirmed that there were no additional intruders or signs of forced entry. Weapon analysis verified that the firearm used by Corry was registered to him, further reinforcing the sequence of events leading to the deaths. The official law enforcement narrative established that Kristopher Corry acted as the aggressor in the fatal encounter. Based on evidence gathered from the scene, the autopsy results, and ballistic reports, investigators determined that the event unfolded as a domestic confrontation that escalated to fatal violence. The Burlington County Prosecutor's Office reviewed the case and issued a statement confirming the ruling of murder-suicide. Authorities emphasized that the evidence indicated a single aggressor and that there were no third parties involved. Police reports also noted the standard procedures followed during the initial response. Officers conducting domestic dispute or wellness check calls are trained to secure the scene, interview witnesses, and preserve all physical evidence for forensic analysis. In this case, responding officers immediately established a perimeter around the apartment, requested specialized homicide investigators, and documented all observations prior to moving or touching evidence. The chain of custody for all collected items, including the firearm, clothing, and blood samples, was maintained according to departmental protocols. Investigators also coordinated with the county medical examiner to ensure that autopsy findings were accurately correlated with the evidence collected at the scene, including blood patterns and trauma documentation. Subsequent internal review highlighted the steps taken to ensure compliance with local procedures for handling domestic disputes. Officers noted that the scene was handled according to department policy, with focus on preserving forensic integrity while ensuring that potential witnesses were interviewed in a timely manner. The law enforcement narrative, therefore, combined detailed procedural adherence with the forensic evidence, reinforcing the conclusion of murder-suicide. The discovery of Drummond and Corry's deaths drew immediate attention from both local media and social platforms. News outlets reported the incident in Burlington Township, highlighting the official ruling while noting Drummond's role as a mother and community member. Social media responses varied, with residents sharing accounts of disturbances they had observed and expressing concern over domestic disputes in their neighborhoods. The public coverage contributed to awareness of the case, ensuring that community members understood the official findings and the scope of the investigation. In the aftermath, local community members organized support initiatives for Drummond's children. Fundraisers were established to provide financial assistance for her surviving family members, and local organizations contributed resources to assist with ongoing needs. The community also hosted remembrance events, including gatherings to honor Drummond's life and contributions as a parent and active resident. These efforts were coordinated in a factual, organized manner, ensuring that support was delivered effectively without compromising the ongoing investigative or legal processes. Media coverage also examined patterns of domestic violence in the area, drawing attention to warning signs and preventive measures. Reports emphasized the importance of recognizing early indicators of conflict escalation and highlighted resources for intervention. This coverage reinforced public awareness of potential risks in domestic environments while maintaining a neutral and fact-based tone in describing the events of case. The circumstances surrounding the deaths of Drummond and Corry prompted broader examination of domestic violence, mental health, and community responsibilities. Investigators and public officials noted indicators of escalating domestic conflict, including prior reports of disputes and observed behavioral patterns. While there was no public record of formal restraining orders or previous arrests for domestic violence in this case, authorities emphasize the need for vigilance and intervention when warning signs are present. Mental health considerations were also discussed as part of the analysis of underlying factors. Experts noted that access to mental health support and crisis intervention resources can be critical in preventing escalation to lethal outcomes. Law enforcement protocols include opportunities for identifying individuals at risk and providing information on available services. In this case, investigators reviewed the timeline of events to determine whether mental health resources could have been utilized, though no definitive conclusions were drawn regarding the influence of untreated conditions on the fatal incident. The role of neighbors and community members in domestic disputes was another point of focus. Individuals witnessing conflict are encouraged to report concerns to law enforcement or crisis hotlines, providing timely information that can inform preventive action. In Burlington Township, several neighbors had observed disturbances prior to the deaths, demonstrating the complexity of determining when intervention may be effective or necessary. Authorities highlighted the importance of public awareness, community engagement, and adherence to reporting protocols as mechanisms to support potential victims and prevent similar incidents. Law enforcement and investigative teams conducted multiple interviews as part of the inquiry into the deaths of Tianna Drummond and Kristopher Corry. Neighbors who heard the dispute reported that the night before the incident, there were repeated sounds of shouting and furniture being moved or struck. One neighbor indicated the argument lasted several minutes before fading into silence. Others confirmed hearing the sound of a gunshot shortly afterward, prompting at least one resident to contact emergency services. Statements from these witnesses form part of the timeline used by police to reconstruct the events within the apartment. Friends and family of Drummond provided accounts of her personal habits, routines, and interactions with Corry. They describe her as a structured individual who maintained regular schedules for her children and professional obligations. Multiple acquaintances confirmed that while Drummond and Corry had occasional disagreements, there was no known history of physical violence reported to friends or family prior to the incident. Family members provided investigators with insights into her daily activities, which helped verify the timeline of her last known movements. Former co-workers and acquaintances also contributed observations regarding the interactions between Drummond and Corry. These interviews highlighted the couple's public presence and involvement in the local community. They indicated that Drummond had a professional demeanor and was considered reliable and responsible. Co-workers reported seeing Corry in a social context within the community and noted no overt threats or behavior that suggested imminent danger. These accounts assisted investigators in evaluating potential triggers or stressors within the relationship. Law enforcement personnel involved in the case offered procedural details about the investigation. Officers detailed their methods for securing the crime scene, processing evidence, and coordinating with the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office. Detectives explained the challenges of establishing a clear sequence of events within the apartment, citing the positioning of the victims and physical evidence that indicated a violent confrontation. Statements from responding officers contributed to understanding the timeline and identifying points where intervention may have been possible. Expert commentary provided additional context on the dynamics of domestic disputes and behavioral patterns. Psychologists explained common indicators of escalating conflicts, while domestic violence specialists outlined typical warning signs that may precede lethal outcomes. Legal analysts discussed procedural standards for homicide investigations and the classification of murder-suicide cases, offering viewers insight into how conclusions are reached based on forensic evidence and witness statements. These expert analyses framed the investigative findings within broader societal and legal perspectives. Despite the official ruling classifying the incident as a murder-suicide, several aspects of the case remain open to examination. Motive is a central area of interest. While authorities determined that Corry was responsible for fatal injuries inflicted on Drummond before taking his own life, the underlying reasons for the attack have not been conclusively documented. Investigators reviewed financial records, communication logs, and personal correspondence, but found no definitive motive that clearly explains the sudden escalation to lethal violence. Analysts and law enforcement officers acknowledged that situational stressors, unresolved disputes, or previously unreported conflicts may have contributed to the outcome. Corry's social media activity and personal history were examined as part of the investigative process. Review of online interactions, posts, and messages provided insight into his daily routines and social behavior. Patterns identified through social media did not reveal explicit threats, though they did indicate possible emotional or interpersonal tensions. Investigators considered these findings when attempting to reconstruct the psychological state of Corry prior to the incident. Gaps in the timeline have also been noted. There are periods during the evening of January 1st, 2020, where neither neighbors nor electronic records provide definitive information on the couple's movements or interactions. While witness accounts establish the occurrence of an argument, the sequence of events leading directly to the fatal confrontation is not fully documented. Community-reported observations, including delayed emergency calls and variations in witness recollection, introduce uncertainties that remain part of the ongoing public discussion about the case. The consequences of this incident extend beyond the immediate loss of life. Long-term impact on Drummond's children and extended family includes the abrupt removal of a parental figure and the resulting adjustments to daily life. Guardianship arrangements were established, and family members assumed responsibility for care and oversight. The community provided support through organized efforts, but the structural disruption to the family unit remains significant. Extended family members have noted the practical and logistical challenges of managing the household, ensuring education, and addressing the legal requirements following the deaths. Community discussions surrounding domestic violence and early intervention intensified following the incident. Public forums, school boards, and local organizations initiated programs aimed at increasing awareness of conflict escalation and identifying early warning signs. Law enforcement agencies emphasize the importance of timely reporting and documenting the role neighbors can play in detecting and responding to potential domestic incidents. Policy discussions included strategies for intervention, including coordination between social services, law enforcement, and mental health professionals to prevent similar outcomes. Policy considerations for police and social services were also analyzed. Investigators reviewed the response timeline, procedures for welfare checks, and communication protocols with mental health services. Recommendations highlighted the need for increased training for first responders in domestic violence recognition, as well as protocols for monitoring individuals at risk for escalation. These discussions informed ongoing reviews of local policies regarding dispute resolution, risk assessment, and community safety measures. The case of Tianna Drummond and Kristopher Corry serves as a complex example of a domestic incident resulting in a fatal outcome. Reflections on lessons learned focus on the importance of systematic investigation, thorough evidence collection, and multi-source corroboration to establish the sequence of events. The combination of witness accounts, forensic analysis, and expert interpretation illustrates the procedural standards required for an accurate determination of responsibility in cases involving both homicide and suicide. Summary of unresolved questions and remaining mysteries includes the specific motive for the fatal act, gaps in the timeline preceding the incident, and potential warning signs that were not recognized. While the official ruling provides a procedural conclusion, analytical review emphasizes that several details may never be fully clarified. Observers continue to examine the circumstances for insight into domestic conflict escalation. Visual close emphasizes the physical and social environment of the incident. Willow Point Apartments, presented as silent and empty streets, serves as a factual reminder of the location and its context within Burlington Township. Archival footage and public records underscore the community impacted by these events, highlighting structural and societal factors relevant to understanding similar cases in the future. The conclusion frames a narrative in a factual, comprehensive context, while leaving unresolved elements open for continued examination and policy consideration. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.